DKIM, DMARC, and AI. Email text simplified. Why email text suddenly got real for sales teams. If you lead a B2B revenue team today, you're operating in an inbox arms race. Nearly 47% of global email traffic is spam, and roughly 3.4 billion phishing emails get sent every day. That volume forces mailbox providers to treat every unfamiliar sender as guilty until proven innocent, including legitimate outbound. The twist is that attackers now use AI the same way modern sales teams do, to scale convincing messaging. Microsoft's 2025 digital defense research, as widely reported, indicates AI-powered phishing can be 4.5 times more effective than traditional attempts, with click-through rates reported as high as 54% in some scenarios. When the bad guys get better, Gmail, Yahoo, and Outlook respond by tightening authentication and letting their own AI filters take a harder line on anything that looks off. For SDR orgs, this isn't IT trivia, it's pipeline protection. If your outbound emails don't authenticate cleanly, they'll land in spam, get throttled, or get rejected. And a few bad campaigns can damage domain reputation for everyone: sales, marketing, and leadership. That's why a modern B2B sales agency, or SDR agency, has to treat deliverability like a core revenue system, not an afterthought. Email authentication explained like you're running RevOps. Email still performs when it's done right. Recent B2B benchmarks often show open rates around 39 to 40% for services, even as click-through rates hover near the low single digits. But those numbers assume your messages reach the inbox in the first place. Authentication is how you prove to mailbox providers that your email is legitimate, consistent, and tied to the domain you claim to represent. SPF is the "who's allowed to send" layer. DKIM is the "this message wasn't tampered with" layer. And DMARC is the "here's what to do if something doesn't match" layer. DMARC also adds reporting so you can see who is sending as your domain and where failures are happening. The moment you add a new sequencer, CRM, marketing tool, or help desk sender, you're effectively changing your domain's sending footprint, and SPF, DKIM, DMARC must stay aligned. The adoption gap is the real risk. Research has found only about 33.4% of domains had a valid DMARC record in large-scale scans, and only around 7.7% enforced the strongest policy level. That means many brands are still easy to spoof, and mailbox providers have less signal to distinguish your SDR outreach from impersonation attempts. In practice, that uncertainty gets paid for in deliverability, trust, and reply rates. SPF versus DKIM versus DMARC, what each one does for outbound. Sales leaders don't need to become DNS engineers, but you do need a clear mental model of what's failing when inboxing drops. SPF failures often show up when your sending IPs don't match the allowed list. DKIM failures appear when messages aren't signed correctly or signatures break, and DMARC failures are typically alignment problems where the visible from domain doesn't line up with SPF, DKIM results. When you understand the role of each control, you can ask IT the right questions and avoid slow, vague troubleshooting. DMARC is the lever that turns "we have authentication" into "mailbox providers know what to do with failures." With DMARC, you can start in monitoring mode, then progressively move to quarantine and reject as you fix gaps. That phased approach is the difference between tightening security and accidentally blocking legitimate SDR emails during a busy quarter. There's also a direct security to revenue connection. IBM reported the average cost of a data breach at about $4.88 million in 2024, and phishing remains a top initial access vector. Even if your sales org never gets breached, spoofing can poison the well. prospects who receive fake "your company" messages become less likely to trust the real outreach that follows. Authentication protects brand trust, not just inbox placement. What Google and Yahoo's bulk sender rules changed in practice. In 2024, Gmail and Yahoo pushed the market forward by requiring stronger standards for bulk senders, commonly cited as 5,000+ messages per day. The headline items were straightforward: authenticate with SPF and DKIM, publish a DMARC record, make unsubscribing easy, and keep user complaints low. Even if your team isn't sending at bulk scale, these policies influence filtering across the ecosystem because mailbox providers standardize around the same signals. Complaint rates became a hard guardrail. Guidance tied to these policies has repeatedly emphasized staying under 0.3%, with less than 0.1% often cited as the healthy target for stable deliverability. Practically, that means list quality, targeting, and relevance are now inseparable from deliverability, because recipients can punish you with one click, and the provider treats that as a trusted signal. Adoption accelerated as a result. Deliverability research has noted DMARC usage rising from 42.6% 2023 to 53.8% 2024 in some sender datasets, reaching roughly 70% among high-volume senders. Separate reporting also described DMARC-enabled domains reaching about 6.8 million by September 2024, reflecting a broad rush to comply. The lesson for SDR leaders is simple. If you're not authenticated, you're not competing on a level playing field. Deliverability isn't a trick. It's the compound result of authentication, reputation, and whether real humans actually want your emails. A safe DMARC rollout that won't break legitimate SDR sending. The most expensive DMARC mistake is going straight to enforcement without understanding your current mail streams. A phased rollout lets you protect the domain while keeping revenue programs running. Start by publishing DMARC with p=none so you can monitor. Then identify every platform that sends as your domain: Google Workspace or Microsoft 365, your CRM, your cold email agency tooling, support systems, and any marketing automation. Once you have visibility, you can fix alignment and signing issues before mailbox providers start blocking anything. Next, move from p=none to quarantine in a controlled window and confirm that legitimate messages continue to pass SPF DKIM alignment. This is where teams commonly discover hidden senders, old tools, abandoned subdomains, or helpful plugins that send on your behalf without proper DKIM. When those are corrected, you can transition to p=reject for the domains that should never be spoofed, which is how you actually shut the door on impersonation. At SalesHive, we coordinate these changes directly with IT and marketing because Outbound doesn't live in a vacuum. Our deliverability playbooks are designed to keep sales moving while authentication tightens, and we'll recommend domain segmentation, primary domain versus sending subdomains, when it makes sense for risk management. If you're running sales outsourcing or managing an outsourced sales team, this matters even more, because multiple people and tools touching the domain increases the chance of small misconfigurations that quietly tank inboxing. AI personalization that improves replies without triggering filters. AI can be a deliverability tailwind or a deliverability disaster, depending on how you use it. When personalization is real, specific, accurate, and relevant, it tends to reduce negative signals, deletes, spam complaints, and "this is irrelevant" reactions. Many teams report reply rates improving by 3 times plus when they move from generic templates to truly tailored messaging. And the downstream effect is often better reputation because engagement signals look human, not automated. The common mistake is treating AI like a synonym for more volume. Mailbox providers are increasingly sensitive to repetitive structure, thin value props, and identical sending patterns across large prospect lists, especially when combined with poor targeting. If your AI outputs read like a mail merge with a buzzword garnish, It can actually increase spam complaints and degrade reputation faster than a purely manual approach. We built SalesHive's AI tooling, including eMod, around deep, verifiable personalization, pulling public prospect and company context so the message feels handwritten, not mass-produced. That approach complements our outbound sales agency work across email and cold calling services because the goal is consistent: earn attention with relevance, then convert it into meetings. Since 2016, we've booked 100,000 plus meetings for 1,500 plus B2B companies, and we only get that kind of repeatable outcome by protecting deliverability while improving message quality. Deliverability killers we see every week and how to fix them. One quiet killer is misalignment. SPF or DKIM might technically pass, but the authenticated domain doesn't align with the visible from domain, so DMARC fails and providers downgrade trust. Another is messy sender sprawl. Multiple platforms sending as the same domain with inconsistent DKIM selectors, partial SPF coverage, or missing DMARC reporting addresses. These aren't theoretical issues. They show up as sudden dips in Gmail placement, unexplained throttling, or campaigns that used to work and abruptly stop. List quality is the other half of the equation, and it's where many SDR teams sabotage themselves without realizing it. Old data, role-based inboxes, and broad targeting increase bounces and complaints, pushing you toward the thresholds providers watch most closely. If you're running B2B list building services or scaling a sales development agency program, you need hygiene rules that are strict enough to protect the domain and flexible enough to keep pipeline full. The fix is boring, but it works. Authenticate every sending domain, control who can send, and tighten targeting until complaints stay consistently below 0.1%. Pair that with sending discipline, reasonable ramp-up, consistent cadence, and avoiding sudden spikes, so you don't look like a compromised account or a spam operation. When deliverability is treated as an operational system, like lead routing or pipeline stages, it becomes predictable instead of mysterious. How to monitor, test, and improve inbox placement over time. Treat authentication as your foundation and monitoring as your early warning system. DMARC reports show you who's sending and what's failing. Mailbox feedback loops and complaint signals show whether recipients are unhappy. And deliverability testing helps you catch issues before they become pipeline outages. The goal isn't perfection on day one. It's tightening the system each week so your sending reputation compounds in your favor. Optimization is where a strong outbound program separates itself from spray and pray. Instead of blasting the same copy to everyone, you should vary messaging responsibly, segment by persona and intent, and use AI to create meaningful differences in value props, not just synonyms. When you combine this with consistent technical alignment, you end up with a program that scales without creating the repetitive patterns mailbox AI is designed to suppress. This is also where the right partner can save months. SalesHive operates as a cold email agency and sales outsourcing partner, but deliverability is the plumbing underneath everything we do: email, calling, research, and list building. With US-based SDRs and Philippines-based research support, we keep outreach quality high while maintaining the technical guardrails that protect domains and keep meetings flowing. The next 30 to 90 days, a practical plan for sales leaders. Start by making deliverability measurable. Confirm SPF and DKIM are set for every sending source, publish DMARC at P equals none, and review reports until you have a complete inventory of legitimate senders. If you're unsure where to begin, ask a simple question internally. Which tools can send as our domain today? The gaps you uncover there usually explain 80% of inboxing problems. Then move to enforcement deliberately. Fix alignment issues, transition to quarantine, and only then consider P=reject for the domains you want fully protected. In parallel, tighten your outbound operating standards. Complaints under 0.1%, steady volume ramps, and messaging that earns engagement instead of provoking deletes. This is also the right time to upgrade personalization, because relevant messages are more resilient under modern filtering. Finally, treat AI and authentication as one system. Attackers are using AI at scale, and mailbox providers are using AI to stop them. The winners in Outbound will be teams that prove legitimacy technically and prove relevance emotionally. Whether you run outreach in-house or partner with a B2B sales agency like SalesHive, the North Star is the same. Protect trust, protect deliverability, and keep qualified meetings on the calendar without constantly fighting the spam folder.